Good morning, everybody. You're listening to the Jake Martinez podcast. I'm your host, and today is the 12th of November. You're tuning in exactly 1 week since the Trump campaign was able to defeat resoundingly the Kamala Harris campaign in the 2024 presidential election. Not only did Trump carry a presidential victory, which was enormous, winning the popular vote in addition to the Electoral College, but he also brought with him a number of gained seats in the Senate and a smaller but still definitive gained seats in the Congress. So we got a trifecta. We got majorities for the Republican Party in the executive branch, the Congress, and of course the Senate. We've also got a 27, I believe it was, to 23 advantage in the governor's seats all throughout the country. So that's pretty awesome because those governors have massive influence in their states, in their respective states. And of course, overarching over all of this is the one thing that has been conservative in the last 4 years or so, which is the courts. So the Supreme Court has made a number of decisions that are conservative or maybe even just like common sense leaning. So that, with all the other things, really point to a mandate, a significant cultural shift, and there's no other word for it other than a mandate, a destiny for the Republican Party, the new Republican Party, to institute and administer great and significant changes to the federal government. You know, we've been talking about this for many, many years. I feel like this started poking its head out from the ground in the form of like a little, seedling when Ron Paul, I think it was in the 2004 election, went on the Republican debate stage and was like, hey, we need to disband the CIA, we need to disband the FBI, we need to disband all of these government agencies because they're unconstitutional. And he just goes into it. Like, we need to go back to founding father principles, to the principles of our founding fathers, and make the size of government smaller, make it work for the people, make it accountable again, and decrease the size of this bureaucratic state. This was, of course, I think, in his mind, not just a response to the growing reach of the federal government, but it was also a direct response to the recently enacted Patriot Act, which reduced and eliminated a lot of civil liberties and, of course, freedoms that we enjoy. It made it okay for the government to spy on us. It made all sorts of changes, TSA, to name a few, that really do not coincide and work with our constitutional framework. So he went out on this debate stage and said that, and people thought he was crazy. I remember Bill Maher bringing him onto the show and was like, I'd feel naked without the CIA. Like, that would be a terrible thing to lose the CIA. And you fast forward 20 years, and man, you have most of the country saying we need, maybe they're not saying exactly like what Ron Paul was saying back in 2004, but they are saying very similar things in terms of like decreasing the size of the federal government. I know like Vivek Ramaswamy was, really turning a lot of heads when he said like we need to fire 75% of the government. And that is something that a lot of people seem to be on board with. And that's not something that Trump has directly said that he wants to do. But it seems like him bringing in Elon Musk, who fired like 80% of the staff of Twitter, changed the name. Like, we're going in this direction of a revolutionary change in the federal government. And, of course, it would be the new Republican Party, not the old one, not the Jeb Bush Republican Party, not the George Bush Republican Party, but the new Republican Party, the one that has essentially been established under the I'll now call the Trump Revolution, to administer these new and sweeping changes that the public really wants. And all of this, of course, is coming onto the heels of Supreme Court decisions that say that these regulations, especially those imposed by like the EPA, I think it was like West Virginia versus EPA. I read about it a while ago, heard some people talking about it, but that gives a framework, that gives like an overarching like permission slip, if you will, that says to the federal government, especially within the legislative branch and the executive branch, that hey, if you guys go ahead and get rid of a lot of those regulations, and that Congress should be the ones that are passing these laws, the laws that affect people, because those are the people that were elected, that these unelected bureaucrats that run in a permanent state, the EPA, any number of the like the three-letter agencies that you want to say that have impact on the people in terms of like how they live their lives and how it affects them on a day-to-day basis, that these mandates, that these regulations need to be in the form of a law. And those laws can only be written by the legislative branch, the Congress and the Senate. And I think what we're starting to see is the Senate and the Congress saying, especially if you look at guys like Representative Thomas Massey, if you look at Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee, if you look at Senator Rick Scott, especially Rick Scott, who is would be my pick to be the new Senate Majority Leader, that these guys are saying like, hey, this whole process needs to be streamlined. By the time President Trump gets to sit down for the first time in the Oval Office, instead of him having to write 120 executive orders, he should be signing 10, 15 bills that go into law, that go into effect, so that these changes become semi-permanent, if not permanent. That the next administration that comes in, hopefully, I mean, it's J.D. Vance or it's Ron DeSantis, but if it's not, and it's a Democrat, then they're going to need a majority to be able to change the laws and to change the meaningful and long-lasting impact that we want to make on the federal government. This is the mandate that the people have given them. If you looked at the map of how the country voted, this was a massive repudiation of the Democratic policies from, I'm going to say the Obama administration from 2008. From 2008 to 2016. And then, but also from the Biden administration from 2020 to 2024, because they're pretty much the same policy. They're just what it would have been if you kind of like cemented. So I kind of think of like a lot of the times in which you have a presidential, a presidency, those 4 years. The president during the first 4 years is really just like establishing their policy. They're working with Congress. They're using their executive orders. They're using the phone and their pen. They're making the policy changes, appointing the governors. I'm sorry, not governors. They're appointing the any kind of like vacant seats, any seats that are under their authority to fill. They're there to fill the executive branch, of course, but they're also there to fill these lower courts and these mid-level courts. And they're there to put all these people into place that they agree with, that they at least find suitable for those positions. That's the first 4 years. The second 4 years is like if they do get reelected, is cementing those policies. Now, Biden's policies or his presidency was more or less like a third term of Barack Obama's. You saw all the same policies. You just saw them like stapled onto as if it was like the Trump administration like never happened. Of course, there were some like meaningful and long-lasting changes that Trump was able to get into place, but not really a whole lot, And Biden coming in erased a lot of it and basically continued on with the first 8 years of the Obama years. So that's not good, and we want to avoid that going in with the second Trump term, because he doesn't have that continuation from the first 4 years. It's not like he's already in government. He's already got like the people there, and now he's just like cementing his legacy. Now he's cementing those those policies. However, he is coming in with that trifecta, like we talked about. So the whole process can be streamlined if they're in sync. And it does seem like they're in sync. And then on top of that, you have this like unprecedented mandate from the people that said, we're going to elect the House for you. We're going to elect the Senate for you. We got governors to back you up. We got the courts in, Trump got the courts in your favor. And now Trump's coming back in. No, and of course, on top of all of this, he knows that they are going to take his head off, either figuratively or not figuratively. And he only has a limited amount of time to get these policies in. And the Senate understands that. The House understands that. And what's crazy enough is the people understand that. The people understand that like this needs to be fast. This needs to be surgical. And it would be great if we had, which is I think what makes great J.D. Vance such an amazing pick, is if we have J.D. Vance coming in on the heels of that administration to really cement it with, hopefully, pray to God, 8 years, his first term, and then another presidency to a second term to really cement those policies. And then if they keep doubling down and tripling down and quadrupling down on their identity politics, on their scapegoating, on not being able to adapt and overcome, and not being able to like talk to normal people about normal policies that affect people on a day-to-day basis, then Ron DeSantis might come in behind J.D. Vance. And now we've gone from 12 years to 20 years of, hopefully, pray to God, of solid, constitutionally minded, Republican, conservative, Tea Party-esque leaders to change America transformatively. Okay, so what kind of changes do we expect? Of course, let's talk about the big ones. The first one, of course, is going to be immigration. We've already got a pick. I don't remember the gentleman's name. I think it's like Mike Unon. Or Human. It's a very odd name, but he's that fellow that got really popular and really famous when he got grilled by AOC about family separation when he went on 60 Minutes, and he was like, "Yeah, families can be deported together." So that guy is, a border protector. He's very in line with what the people want, which is, I'm going to be honest, it's unfortunate. I think that a lot of the stuff that we want to do is really unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it came to this. It's unfortunate that the border was left open. It's unfortunate that these people decided they can waltz in. It's unfortunate that the Democrats told them, hey, if you come in, we'll give you free food stamps, we'll give you welfare, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. And you can come in with no buy-in, no money that you put towards this system, no legal authority to even be here. And we're going to give you, the keys to the Corvette. And you can come in and you can leech off the system, and the taxpayers are going to pay for it. It's theft. They stole people's money and gave it to these people, and then they used them as like these political pawns to gather sympathy and create division. And now these people got to go home, And I don't blame them for wanting to come here. I don't blame them at all. They wanted to. Who wouldn't want to come here if you're living in hellhole Venezuela or, communist Cuba or any one of these places? I think the Cubans have a little bit, I might be a little bit biased because my family came here from Cuba, although they came here legally. They came here with visas. They also came during right before or during the Castro Revolution, so it was a long time ago. But nevertheless, they did come here illegally, and then they joined the army or my grandfather, rather, he joined the army when he got here. So he served the country, and then I'm pretty sure he got his green card that way. I don't really remember the whole story, but I remember seeing his army photos, and he kind of explained it that way. And I know that like that was how people got green cards back then. I know that like on my mom's side of the family, they were supposed to live in, they came over from Greece. They were initially supposed to go over to Australia, but then my uncle or my grandmother's brother, so I don't know what kind of connection that is familially, but he he moved over to the United States, joined the army, got a green card, and then he petitioned for his sister, my grandmother, to come. And then that's how my family on my mom's side came here. So they came here on military service, and then, you know, they, or at least they got their green card through military service, and then they had done all the paperwork, etc. And then I served in the military. I served in the Navy. So, we're American patriots. We love this country, and I just want to see people come here that also love the country. And then, like Vivek says, like your first act of coming into the United States and being part of this nation could not have been breaking the law. And I've talked about this many times, but I'm going to reiterate it, that if you go and you actually look at what are the pathways to citizenship, what are the pathways to a green card, they're very, very limited. And any kind of illegal entry, any kind of illegal status, being in the country unauthorized is grounds for deportation, and also is grounds for never allowing that individual to have a green card in the first place. So in short, the Democrats set these people up for what we call in the military, we set them up for failure. They set them up for failure rather. I'm not a Democrat. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that these people were sold a pipe dream, that they came over here, that they're going to get deported, hopefully, and they're going to go back to their homes, and they're most likely never going to be able to come back, hopefully. And if some of them do have the grace, or if some of them are good, or some of them are, willing to go through the legal process, it's going to take them a long time, just like everybody else that has to go through the process. And they're going to have to pay the money, and they're going to have to pay the fees, and they're going to have to wait in line, and they're going to have to go get the vaccinations, and then jump through all the hoops that the U.S. requires for these people to be entered into the United States. There's a lot that goes into it. It doesn't just it's bewildering. It's bewildering that there's a line of legal immigrants that are trying to come into the country legally, going through all the hoops and signing all the stuff that they got to sign and doing all the paperwork that they got to do. And then there's another line of people that are just like, yeah, I'm here. Let me in. Let me get an Obama phone. Let me get this. Let me get that. And let me go chill on the couch and you pay for me while I'm over here. It's totally ridiculous. So enough ranting about it. But in terms of policy, of course, they're going to be, there's lots of talks about the border being closed, that this guy is the guy to do it, the one that Trump put in charge of the border. That we also, I think, and this is just me, we need to change fundamentally the immigration system. The immigration system needs to reflect a one that incentivizes assimilation. Right now, we don't have that. We have, for those of you who don't know, there's this program called H-1B. And H-1B is essentially a company petitions for a foreign worker to come into the United States. And it's filled with all these loopholes and all these other weird things about it. But if you really look into it, essentially what's going on is, on face value, it's that, hey, this company can't find a U.S. worker to fill this slot. So they need to hire a foreign worker to fill the slot. Now, usually what happens is they can't find an American worker because they're going to pay them what's called like the prevailing wage. And the prevailing wage is like the minimum wage for that position. Now, usually they actually can find American workers that want to do it. They just aren't advertising it in a way, because the law says like, oh, you have to advertise it in a certain amount of mediums. You have to make it like publicly available. So in other words, they can't just, like, oh, we have a job opening for, Vladimir so-and-so. And then like the position gets filled by that person. No, they have to open the position for the public. And then they're like, oh, like we couldn't find anybody, but we do know this guy, Vladimir, so-and-so, and he is perfect for the job, and we can't find an American. And then the Department of Labor is like, okay, well, you did your due diligence. Let us know, like, let me see all of your like contacts of people who applied for the position, and let me make sure that you didn't like disqualify any Americans that could have done the job for undue reasons. Well, right there's a whole lot of things that can be, fraudulent. They can alter the emails. They can, you know, add all these things onto the job description that are like kind of like tailored to that person. They're not really supposed to do that, and then like the Department of Labor should catch those things, but they kind of don't sometimes. And there's all sorts of other things that go into it. In short, the way that companies are using it, not I just kind of talked about like on face value what it's supposed to be, but the way that companies are using it is a way to hire their friends and hire their people from back home that they know, and give those positions to those people when Americans do and oftentimes are not just qualified to do the position, but are applying for the position and they're being rejected for undue reasons. And they're getting away with it, and they have been getting away with it for decades. So this is the H-1B program. This is like the program where they bring foreign workers in. And then the foreign workers are so abused by these companies that they don't want to work for them by the time that they're done with the H-1B program. Because there's this other thing called perm. So once they've completed their H-1B, they have to repost the job. And then when they say repost a job, they go through essentially the same process again, but this time it's for a green card. This time the person is there permanently. And then oftentimes, like I said, these people are so abused by these companies that petitioned for them to have their H-1B working visa that they no longer want to work for these companies. I remember a case that I saw where a guy was working as like a senior software engineer, and he couldn't work at that company a day longer because of how badly they were treating him. So he ended up working at Subway. The only problem was that when he was working at Subway, he didn't make the amount of money that he needed in order to petition for his wife. So he had one of his friends sign on as a joint sponsor so that he and his friend could sponsor his wife to come over, because he was making like crap money, obviously at Subway, even though this guy was like a senior software engineer. So there's a lot of screwed up things about our immigration system. It doesn't promote assimilation. It doesn't promote people coming here on merit. It doesn't promote people that want to really be here, other than the fact that like they want to work here, that they don't have like any kind of like, in other words, a lot of these people could just go to like Australia and they'd be just as happy, or to the UK or to Canada or Germany, or any kind of like highly developed Western country, and just be happy there, but there's nothing that like uniquely inspires them to come to the United States or a particular city in the United States, other than the fact that like, they have a cousin here or something like that. I mean, which is a pretty good reason, but it's not the same as like having like, oh, I want to move to this country because I really agree with the principles and the ideals. And I love the idea of like the Second Amendment. I love the idea of the Constitution. I read up on it, all those things. So an immigration system that speaks to the assimilation process, similar. Another thing that'd be great with it would be like a process that is similar to like how like some countries in Western Europe are actually doing this now, like in particular is Switzerland, where they will allow you to come into the country on a green card, permanent residency, on the condition that you go to like a particular town. And the reason why they do that is because like this town needs people. Like there's only like 10,000 people in this town, and you go to this town and then they need teachers. So if you have the skill of being a teacher, then they will get you a green card. You go to this specific town and you have to live there for X amount of years. If you don't get in trouble, if you don't have any issues with the law, if you learn the language, and then you're forced into like a kind of like a small to like medium-sized town. So if you think that like those people are going to accommodate you to your language, whatever it is, then you got another thing coming, because those people in that small town are going to expect you to live like a Swiss person, and speak their language and adapt to their customs and know their way of life and integrate yourself into that community. And this forces people to assimilate, this process, because What you're not seeing when you do things like that is you're not seeing things like Little Tokyo or Little Chinatown or Little Saigon or Little Athens or Little Odessa. You're not seeing those types of phenomenon where people migrate from in clumps in that particular country from that country, name the country, and then they go to a city, and then there's like a section of that city that everyone speaks Russian, or like all the billboards are in Russian, or Japanese, or you name the language. Like we've all seen them. We've all seen them all around the United States. Especially Spanish. Like if you go to San Isidro, which is like right on the border of like the town that's like right on the border of San Diego and Tijuana. San Isidro is like everything is in Spanish. It might as well be Mexico. Like, you might as well move the border over like another, 10 miles, because like that's how much that area looks like Mexico. Like everything is in Spanish. Like literally almost everything is in Spanish. Okay, so we have a number of reforms that we are expecting / hope for in the category of immigration, and then of course we've talked a little bit about the idea of like the Department of Government Efficiency, bringing Elon Musk in, and he's going to cut government growth and government spending in order to increase efficiency. And I think a lot of people might have like experienced this, like if you're at your job, that like if there's like too many people working, then like things become inefficient. Whereas if like the perfect number of people are working, then like there's no place for people to hide. Like everyone's activated, everyone's involved, everyone's motivated to like get the job done. And with fewer number of people, you're actually like a little bit more efficient. And I think that's like kind of like what he has in mind. Although he hasn't really gotten into specific details about like what he plans to do once he gets in for the Department of Government Efficiency, as far as I know. But I do expect him to do something similar to what he did with Twitter, because it worked, and why wouldn't it work with the federal government? It's so bloated and, disgusting that maybe even like 80% would be a little bit too low. Of course, with RFK involved in the government, I would expect to see some changes in terms of health, vaccine processes, government transparency, in terms of vaccine mandates, and the liability or lack of liability that the pharmaceutical companies currently have to change to liability if they make vaccines that hurt people. So we expect some changes for that. And of course, we also expect some changes depending on like where he puts Tulsi Gabbard. I would expect her to be either Secretary of Defense or in charge of Veterans Affairs. I think her talents would be wasted at Veterans Affairs. I think having her in charge of the Defense Department would be the best use of her talents. That she could really do a lot of great things there. That we would have a lot of like peace through strength initiatives. That there'd be a refocus towards, just like sound policies for the Department of Defense. And well, that's really all I can think about. I know that he's also bringing in Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. I think that's kind of a poor choice. It's not a great choice. It's not a terrible choice. It's like, I don't know. Don't really have anything else to say about it besides that. And I think that we have a lot of things that we can expect to be great from this new administration from 2024 to 2028. I think it's going to be a great one. I think it's going to usher in a lot of amazing and great changes. And I think the worst thing about it would be just complacency, that we just take this mandate, that we take this opportunity and we squander it, and we don't stay on top of these people. Because from 2016, if if the Republican Party was like the Democratic Party, and you had like all these super delegates, and you had just like this rigged process and the primaries, then we would have had Jeb Bush versus Hillary, and it's essentially just like, two different faces of the same coin. We would have got the same old, same old. But we didn't get that. We got Trump versus Hillary, and then we had a Trump administration from 2016 to 2020. And then in 2020, the world went really, really crazy, and what I would call a coup. And whether or not that whole thing was planned or coordinated or whatever, the fact of like how they responded to COVID during that time is a coup, or was a coup. And I don't really have all the time to like go into it, but if you read The Real Anthony Fauci by RFK Jr., it really highlights some crazy things that happened during that time, and the medical tyranny that man ushered in. Because, I mean, we all lived through it, and we all experienced it. It was, nothing about that was okay. And I think I'll just leave it as that. I think it's a little bit too depressing to get into. But another thing that I think of in terms of, while on the topic of RFK Jr., is I think that we're going to see a dismantling of the CIA in particular. And if I was Trump, I would put him in charge of the CIA for like the first like year, and just have him completely gut it, because I think that it would be just like complete like poetic justice, like just God's justice, that man gets to destroy the government agency that killed his dad and his uncle. And if they didn't like do it like 100%, then like they have some level of, I think at least they have some level of culpability in his dad and his uncle being killed. So that would be like just amazing justice for the Kennedy family, to be able to destroy the CIA for doing that to that man's family, and to many other people's families, for being honest. And then after he dismantles it, they can get a real spy guy to go in there and run it effectively and honestly, and with ethics. And then he can move on to, health and human services or something like that. Something where he'll have a lasting impact for vaccine safety and FDA controls and all that good stuff. So a lot of really great stuff that we have a lot to look forward to. And I think all of us have a duty and responsibility to keep in touch with our congressmen and our senators, tweet and reach out to people that are involved in the government and say, hey, we gave you this opportunity. We're the ones that put you there. We're the ones that put you there for a reason, and please fulfill that, because I'm speaking for myself now. I want a country that my little girl can grow up in and not be bombarded with, transgender policies and like propaganda, and not be propagandized by the media, that she can get real news and be a really actually like functioning citizen in our society, and that she can go down the street safely without criminal illegal alien gangs doing crazy stuff to her or her friends, that she can go to a public school and not be propagandized to hate her country and to hate her parents, and that she can serve in a military that doesn't get involved in pointless, stupid wars to make a few psychopaths rich. That she can be proud to be an American, and that she doesn't have to pay for past generations' debts, and financially and morally, and that she can live in a country that is just like sane. And I think it's very sad that the previous generation passed off this mess to us. And although it's like satisfying to be able to like really work hard to fix it, I don't want that for her. I don't want her to inherit my generation's mess. I want her to be better off than we were. And I want her progeny to be more, well off than she was. That's like, I think, what we all basically want. And the fact that we're dealing with this complete mess right now is just like unacceptable, but we're working through it. We're doing the best that we can. We got a lot of great people on it, and I guess that's all we can really hope for. And praise God that he gave us results, and that he gave us a champion in Donald Trump that led a revolution, and at least got us a fighting chance to be able to make lasting and permanent changes to this great country that is capable of so much. And I want to just thank you guys for tuning in this far, if you made it this far. And, thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys out there that, that voted for freedom, that voted for the Constitution, that voted for an America that's not ashamed of itself, that can speak to other nations with pride and dignity, and can negotiate in good faith and in peace with the objective of prosperity and goodwill and the future of humanity in mind. That, we got somebody in the White House that really wants to bring us to the stars, and it really wants to bring us to, geoform and inhabit civilizations on other planets. And I think, that is what we all want. Like, that's what speaks to the human soul. Like, when you see like sci-fi films that, and cartoons from the past that show like the Jetsons, like this marriage of like technology and, love of nature, and like just pushing the, human civilization to new frontiers is like what we really want. Not this like transgender, like fake debate. We want like, like this fake progress. That's like this thing that like is just blows my mind. Like, that's not like progressives are like, oh yeah, this is progress. We got, gay guys in bondage gear slapping each other in the streets. It's not progress. It's not progress by any measure. Progress is like what Elon Musk is doing, grabbing rockets and throwing them in the sky, and like grabbing them on the way down, and dreaming of getting human civilization to Mars and all these other things that he wants to do. And like, that's progress, not gay guys slapping each other's butts in the streets. Anyways, I'll leave it with that. Let's see you guys next week. Take care.